was always the Jags.
It's always the Jags. It's always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, where we talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, fantasy football. I'm actually going to go over my fantasy football draft today, too. Yeah, I can do that. First, we're going to talk about my Jaguars record predictions, what games I think we're going to win, and what games I think we're going to lose, and why. I already did my selections for the NFL, for the entire NFL, which games I think, basically what records I think each team is going to have. And that will kind of let you know like the strength of each team that I'm thinking of. And I'll re-mention that as I go through this one too. But yeah, so we're going to get started and dive right into it with week 1 coming up in September. God, I'm so excited for the season to start. I'm ready. And, again, you can't look too much into the preseason, but, I think fans saw exactly what they wanted to see: an efficient offense led by Trevor, Brian Thomas Jr. showing out, giving us another element to our offense. Everything that we really need in order to kind of take that next step next year. So let's go ahead and start with week 1, where the Jaguars take on the Miami Dolphins. This game is really tough because I could see it going either way. Honestly. Maybe we'll end up getting blown out by Miami, but we'll see. I honestly think it could go either way. So I think right now I have us winning against Miami. Because it's not like we take away Miami's home field advantage because Miami is hotter than Jacksonville. But when you're the home team in Florida, you don't really have home court advantage. Like there will be a lot of Dolphins fans, but we're also used to playing in the heat, so it's not like it's like our training camp has been in blazing heat all year. So that part, like that can mess up other teams that aren't used to that intense Florida humidity heat. As someone from Florida, I'm very used to it, and I think the Jaguars will be as well. And, Tony Baselli and Pete Prisco talked about it a lot. The Dolphins, Odell Beckham is hurt. He's not going to be playing this game. Jalen Waddle, apparently something's going on with his ankle. So he may or may not play. We'll see. But, if you can take away Tyreek Hill, you kind of beat the Dolphins. It's just really that simple. That's how teams got to beat him. And the way that you beat Tyreek Hill, you have a man beat him up on the line of scrimmage. So have Ronald Darby beat him up on the line of scrimmage, and then you have a safety over top. You always have to have a safety over top, which is a really interesting concept that I saw where people will use. We'll kind of get more into depth when I break down the opening of that game next week, Thursdays at 9:00. All these start going live, so I'll talk a little bit more in depth of that, about where I heard that before. But I think we have a recipe on how to beat the Dolphins, and despite the fact that their defense is always loaded with stars, for some reason it always has a lot of holes and a lot of weaknesses through it, and teams always score points on them. So I think we'll be able to figure it out. We could lose this game, but for right now, I have us winning, starting off our season. So that's one win. So far, we're 1-0. Then the Browns are going to come to town in week 2. I think in this game, we enact our revenge because the Browns beat us last time. And I think we were in Cleveland for that game, if I'm not mistaken. So this time, I think we're able to enact our revenge. I don't think we let Deshaun Watson beat us. I think we harassed their offensive line that has gone through crazy amount of injuries this offseason. Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen put on a show, and so does Eric Armstead. And I think the line of scrimmage is where it starts, and I think that's where we win. It's going to be hard to score points on that Browns defense, not going to lie. Their defensive line will probably beat up our offensive line. So, it'll be a lot of quick screens, or a lot of screens, dump offs. Trevor probably won't have time to throw a long ball. So if Doug Peterson implements that in the offense, he'll be able to at least put up something, especially when we have a kicker who's got a really strong leg. Since we got a reliable kicker, if we get to the 40 or 30-yard line, we can at least come away with points. Week number 3, I have us against the Bills. I don't have us against the Bills. The NFL has us against the Bills. Excuse me. And I have us beating the Bills. And again, like, some people might say like that's optimistic. I remember some people say like, oh no, we're gonna lose against the Bills. But I mean, like, we handled the Bills in London last year. And that game didn't look like a fluke. It looked like we knew what we were doing. They had a plan, they executed it, and the Bills made it look a lot closer by the end, but the game was over when Trevor Lawrence converted that third down to Calvin Ridley. The game was over. It was it. It was there's no the Bills could not come back and win. And at that point, it was in the fourth quarter, and we were up by double digits. So and again, to me, the Bills did not get stronger in the offseason. They just lost all of their receivers. And I feel like we as a team did get stronger, at least where we addressed our weaknesses in the offseason. So, yeah, I see us going to Buffalo. It's not going to be cold yet in New York. This is, we're still in September. I see us going into Buffalo and winning. So, on Monday Night Football, yeah, I see it happening. That might make me crazy, but it's just I don't see a good reason for us to lose this game. Um, when again we beat them in London last year, and their biggest threats to us, Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, one came to our side and another one is gone. So and the Bills don't have Mitch Morse anymore. They're starting center. They lost a lot of players this offseason. So I see us going in and beating Buffalo. Still think they're going to be a good team. I have them going 10-7, but I think we do beat Buffalo. Now we're 3-0. Week 4, I think we get our first loss, and that's when we go to Houston and played the Texans. I know it was kind of weird because last year we lost in Jacksonville, but then we won in Houston when we beat the Texans in week 12. So it was kind of like a weird, like usually the home team has advantage. So in this case, I think we ultimately split the series with the Texans, and I think in week 4 we end up losing to them. Which because they have the home field advantage. Um, and I think they're just kind of it'll kind of end up playing out that way. So yeah, we end up losing to the Texans in week 4. So now we are 3-1. Still probably feeling really good. As long as it's not like the embarrassing blowout against the Texans last year, like it should be a hard knuckle fought win. I mean, for the Texans, we'll feel good about it. Week 5, Jaguars play the Colts. There's a lot of hype around the Colts. A lot of people thinking Anthony Richardson can take the next step, and I think he will. I just don't think he's going to do it in week 5. And the Jaguars are at home too. So the Jaguars win. I almost kind of prefer that this game was in Indianapolis because it's so early in the season. I still think Anthony Richardson's not quite going to be there yet. Um, because again, his rookie season is pretty much a wash. Like he's pretty much got to start all over. Because I would pick us to win in Indianapolis, and then we know the Colts don't win at Everbank. So, but either way, I think we beat the Colts in week 5. So now we're officially at 4-1. Now we're going to London, which is our home away from home. Bears. This game it could go either way, kind of. But again, Caleb Williams is a rookie. All that, and he's got some incredible weapons. But again, the Bears' offensive line isn't exactly stellar. So Ryan Nielsen just has to dial up some exotic blitzes, some stuff to confuse him. Stuff designed to confuse a rookie, not a veteran. And you just got to blanket their receivers at the top of the line of scrimmage because their guys will get open. But if you take away Caleb Williams' time, he won't be able to get the ball to them by the time they get open, right? Like blanket them at the line of scrimmage, and our pass rush will get home before those receivers can get open. So that would be my game plan. And again, Roma Doomsday is going to be fantastic and probably carve up the NFL. But it can take some time for even rookie wide receivers to get going. They don't come out in their first game all the time and have 100,000 yards. Even Justin Jefferson in his incredible rookie season, 1,400 yards, he didn't start like really getting 100-yard games until like week 5 or 6. The first couple of weeks, he didn't have anything. So I think it's just too early in the season to crown the Bears right there. I think they're going to get better as the season goes on, but I think it's an advantage Jaguars that we play them so early in the season. So we beat them in London. Week number 7 against the Patriots. Um, if we lose this game, I will no longer be a Jacksonville Jaguars fan because that would just be absolutely ridiculous. Not necessarily because their defense is bad, because again, they have a strong defense that will make Trevor uncomfortable at times, but they have a rookie quarterback and that team doesn't have anyone to throw to. So we should not lose this game. if we do lose this game, we do not deserve to make the playoffs. It's that simple. Jaguars are beating the Patriots week 7 in London. Oh yeah. Next week number 8. Oh, maybe I can even go to that game. But anyway, week number 8 against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are coming to Jacksonville. This is another game that I feel like can go either way. And this one I gave to the Packers. I think they're just kind of playing on a different level right now. And I think it'll be a little bit too much for the Jaguars. And so I think we'll end up losing at home. I think it'll be a close one, but I do think we'll end up losing. It's one of those things where like the Packers and Miami game, I kind of have them both kind of as toss-ups. And so I gave one to us, one to the opponent. So I think if we beat Miami, we'll lose to the Packers. I think if Miami wins, we can beat the Packers. You know what I mean? It's kind of like up and down on each one. So we'll see. Because again, the Packers, like that scheme, those receivers aren't fantastic. They aren't world killers, but somehow they just get open with the scheme and Jordan Love finds them and he puts the ball on them. So that's something that Ryan Nielsen will have to really stay awake and try to defend, you know. So moving on to week number 9, we have the Packers versus the Eagles. We're going up to Philadelphia. Unfortunately, this is another loss. I mean, I'd love to say that we're going to beat the Eagles. And I mean, we did come pretty close, you could say, ish on that rainy day in a few years back. So you could say it's possible. But I do think the Eagles end up getting the win. They're the home team in Philadelphia. It's going to start getting colder up there. People talk about the cold weather teams, about like how it's not the difference between that advantage, and it does make a difference. Like I didn't really think it was going to make that much of a difference until the Chiefs hosted the Dolphins, and then it was like, oh, I see it now, because it really does make a difference. Um, moving on to week 10, Vikings versus the Jaguars. Jaguars going to win. Sorry, Vikings fans. This is actually the game that I'll probably be at. This is the before the tailgate with Tony. So this will kind of be our get right game. I mean, we'll have suffered 2, losses that kind of hurt us. So if I add up our schedule, we'll have 3 losses, and this will be our 7th win. So we'll be 7-3. So still feeling good. And this will kind of be like that get right game to make us feel better again and have the Jaguars keep going. Sam Darnold is just not going to beat us. It's just that simple. Jordan Addison might be back by then, but Sam Darnold is still not going to beat us. Week 11, we go to Detroit to play the Lions. And again, this one I also have as a loss. The Lions, again, different level. They thrashed us a couple years back. I don't think it's going to be as quite of a thrashing, but it won't be a win. That's all I can really say. So we'll end up losing to the Lions here. One thing I will say, I am glad that the Eagles and the Lions are both away games instead of home games, because like when the 49ers came to us last year, it was like, okay, we were going to win they were going to win whether they were the home team or not. It didn't matter. And then they came into our stadium and like thrashed us. It was kind of sad. However, the Eagles and the Lions, I feel like are those kind of teams where like even if it was away, I would be picking them. Um, but since they're home, that's more home games for us where we have a better chance of winning, if that makes any sense. So I think those are 2 games where we lose, and it's okay because especially because they're away games. So next we have week 13. Well, next we have week 12, which is our bye week, which I think it's great that we have one this late in the season. Beautiful timing to help heal up, because guys will be kind of worn out by then. So the bye week timing is a huge advantage for the Jaguars this year. A lot of time, again, because as the season wears on, guys kind of get worn off. Getting that week to rest in week 12 is a huge advantage. And I really love Trevor Lawrence, like talking about the bye week. Trevor Lawrence made a suggestion where if the NFL wants to expand to another game, that team should have 2 bye weeks. And I think that is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Like if that's all the players need is 2 bye weeks, because now the players are still only playing 17 games. And the NFL, though, you get 19 weeks of programming, because even on bye weeks, people still watch football and people are still going to go see their favorite team play, and they're still going to go buy tickets to see games. So it's like while that stadium itself might not be making money on that week, Your broadcasting deals are still going to bring in a whole bunch of money because people still going to want to see more games. That means more primetime spots, more primetime opportunities for late night programming, more viewership, like having more football, but also like it's a great way to bring more football for the fans, but take it off for the players too. So where it's like, okay, you don't have to play because again, each game, like people don't understand how grueling it is, but each game isn't necessarily um they won't have to play more games. They just now have 2 bye weeks, which I think would be an excellent. And you could kind of use the Pro Bowl to kind of make that a little bit different. But I think that's an excellent idea for that Trevor Lawrence suggested having 2 bye weeks. So anyway, back to the regular season. Week 13, the Jaguars host the Texans. I think after the bye week, we're well rested, we're ready to go, and I think we give the Texans a good stomping. I think we beat them, and I think they end up. Yeah, I think we end up beating them, and so now we are 8-3. Again, our only well, no, we're 8-4. Our only losses have been the Lions, Packers, Eagles, and Texas. I think we beat the Texans in week 13. And then on to week 14. So in week 14, we're supposed to go to Nashville. And again, this is one of those teams. I think we're going to end up splitting the series with the Titans again this year. I think they're good enough to where we're going to end up splitting the series. Um, and so I have us losing in Nashville, which is kind of interesting because like we actually play really well in Nashville under Trevor Lawrence. Like that was kind of his breakout game from a year ago where we went up like 36 to something on them. Crazy. So we'll see for sure. But I think week 14, we end up losing to the Titans. Again, it's a heartbreaker, but that's kind of how it goes. So I have us losing to the Titans, which now makes us 8-5, if I'm not mistaken. And then again, we kind of have another loss with the Jets. They come into town, and again, the Jets feel like the Packers and the Dolphins to me. The game could go either way, and I think having home field advantage for us kind of works in our favor. So again, I could see us losing to the Packers, losing to the Dolphins, but beating the Jets somehow. I just think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback still, and I think the Jets have a better defense than the Packers and the Dolphins, which is why I'm a little more. The Jets are just that team that like we haven't seen how good they can be yet. And so like again maybe Aaron Rodgers won't even be healthy for this game. And in that case, it would definitely be a Jaguars win. So in that way, it kind of helps that it's towards the end of the year because I think there's a much greater chance of Aaron Rodgers getting hurt towards the end of the year. But for right now, I have it as a loss with the Jaguars losing to the Jets, which brings our record now to 9-6. So now the playoffs are, or 8-6. So now the playoffs are kind of looking dicey because we've taken 2 losses in a row. Um, and the Jaguars fans are going to be feeling a little nervous, but it's okay because we've got some get right games here. Week 16 is a get right game against the Raiders. I think Doug Peterson is going to be like, if you want the playoffs, you got to go out and prove it. Prove it to me right here on this field right now. And even though it's in Vegas, again, this is another one of those games where whether the Raiders were playing in Vegas or in our stadium, I think we would still win. And I think that's what gives us the advantage here because we're able to go into, because that gives us another home game where we could potentially win, like again, against those bubble games like the Jets and the Packers. So I think we go into Las Vegas. I think we beat the Raiders. I think we beat them soundly. And I think the Jaguars, everyone feels back on track and like we're doing what we need to be doing. We're now 9-6. The playoffs are right on the tip of our tongue. And I think we're going to close out strong. Week 17, Jaguars are going to host the Titans. Last time the Titans came here, we beat them by, was it 37-10? It was something crazy. Trevor Lawrence threw 2 touchdowns and ran for 2 touchdowns. He had a monster day. It was beautiful. I was in the stadium. It was absolutely awesome. And that's exactly what's going to happen in week 17. By this point, again, we are going to lay it down on the Titans and win in front of our home crowd. And then in week 18 is when we go to Indianapolis to play the Colts. And this one could potentially decide whether the Jaguars or the Colts make the playoffs. Or it could potentially decide like where we end up seeding wise. I think again, technically the Colts do have a chance to win, but I do like the Jaguars sweeping the Colts. I feel like especially in the Trevor Lawrence era, I think we kind of have the Colts number. We know how to beat them. And I think there's a couple years ago where they beat us at the very last second with Matt Ryan, and that was just a ridiculous game. But I think Anthony Richardson will find a way to contain him. The playoffs are on the line because if we just switch that to a loss with the Jaguars going 10-7 overall, and let's say the Colts beat us in that last week, we still end up as the 7th seed. The only difference is that the Texans now win the division at 10-7. So even if the Texans have another win somewhere, I'm not really sure where it would be, just kind of playing around with some stuff right now. So let's just leave the Texans at 10-7. So even if the Jaguars do lose that game, I think we still end up at the 7th seed. So I think by if week 17 we can kind of lock up that we're going to make the playoffs. If the Texans go 11-6 by week 17, it won't matter. They will have won the division, right? Because even if we go 11-6, they will have won the division. So if that's how the schedule plays out, I could see Doug Peterson giving our guys a bye week and resting our starters for that last game against the Colts, and they could potentially win and go 8-9, and then the Jaguars would be 10-7. So in a way, it's kind of better that we played the Colts early in the year in our season because that will be a game that matters, and we can play that one at home. And then this one versus the Colts, where we have to go to Indianapolis, that may not matter as much because again, as long as we handle business against the Bills and the Browns, we can ensure that with a 10-7 record, we will make the playoffs. So I think that's kind of the way it all ends up playing out. My official record for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I have us going 11-6. I think we're an 11-6 team. I think we will be able to go 11-6. I know I keep saying that, but we really do feel like an 11-6 team. Looking at our schedule, I really do only see 6 losses. And if we end up with 7, I think that's because Doug Peterson rests the starters. And maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't rest the starters and we still lose that game against the Colts. But I think if, like I said, if the Texans end up going 11-6, or if the Texans ended up wrapping up the division crown by week 17, which again, I do think we're going to beat the Titans no matter what. If the Texans wrap up the division crown by then, I think the Jaguars have a good chance to, okay, let's just rest our starters in week 18. We know we're going to be the wild card team, number 7, because whether we're 11-6 or not, we would be the wild card if the Texans again end up going 11-6. So that's my record for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I have us going 11-6. I think Pete Prisco had them going 9-8, and I think Tony Baselli had them going 11-6 as well. But it's very interesting the games that they picked that we would lose compared to the ones that they picked that we would win. Like they picked that we would lose to the Bills. I don't see that happening. They also picked that we would lose to that we would beat the Jets. And again, I have it reversed. I have us beating the Jets and I have us beating the Bills and losing to the Jets. So some of the other games were kind of, pick and mix depending on where it was. But overall, 11-6, we make the playoffs. And if you want to find out what my predictions are for once the playoffs start, I'll probably run both scenarios, an 11-6 scenario and a 10-7 scenario. If you want to check out that, you'll have to tune in next Thursday at 9 a.m., where you'll be able to hear me talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, our upcoming game against the Miami Dolphins, my fantasy football drafts, and how I think the playoffs would end up playing out if the Jaguars win that season. So, can't wait for the season. Make sure you tune in. Make sure you give us subscribe, like, follow, all of the above, and tap in. Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Are the Jacksonville Jaguars headed in the right direction? And we will see you guys next time. And remember, it was always the Jags.